What does a 19th century style maritime blockade in the Middle East have to do with the price of training in artificial intelligence in Silicon Valley?
I mean, a lot more than you'd think, right?
Yeah, exactly. We tend to look at a map of the world and expect borders to be, fixed. You point to a country or you point to a choke point on the ocean and you assume that physical geography is totally separate from like the digital apps on your phone.
Right. It is a very comforting way to categorize the world. But it is, honestly, it's completely obsolete. The systems that actually run our modern lives operate on this hidden web where physical shipping lanes and cloud computing are just completely tethered to one another.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive into a really fascinating stack of daily briefings for April 28th, 2026. For you, the listener, our mission today is to cut through the noise. We are going to connect the dots between shifting global empires, autonomous AI agents, fragile cyber networks, and the very real impacts on your local school district.
Yeah, it's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. We're unpacking everything from a 13-year-old software bug finally discovered by an AI to a genuinely miraculous gene therapy.
And as we synthesize these sources, a really clear theme emerges. We are watching invisible systems, both the physical supply chains and digital architectures, quietly dictate the reality of our day-to-day lives.
Okay, let's unpack this physical to digital connection because the power dynamics are shifting incredibly fast. So we are currently on day 59 of the U.S.-Israel military campaign against Iran.
Right.
And Tehran has just used Pakistani mediators to propose a deal. They're offering to reopen the Strait of Hormuz if negotiations over their nuclear program are deferred. Now, just for context for everyone listening, the Strait of Hormuz carries about 20% of all global oil trade.
Yeah, it is a textbook geopolitical maneuver. You offer relief on a massive pressing global pain point, in this case, obviously energy prices, in exchange for breathing room on your primary strategic goal.
Which is exactly what's happening. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio actually noted the offer is better than they expected. But the Trump administration is refusing to lift the blockade without locking in those enrichment limits first. For them, lifting the blockade without securing those limits just removes the United States' primary point of leverage.
Makes sense from a negotiation standpoint.
Right. But here is the wild connection for you to consider. How does a standoff over oil in the Middle East actually impact a tech company in California?
Well, it comes down to sheer physical power. When oil stops flowing through that specific choke point, diesel and jet fuel prices immediately spike globally.
Oh, right. Because everything relies on it.
Exactly. People think of the cloud as invisible data, but the cloud lives in massive physical data centers. Those centers require immense power grids, often backed by huge diesel generators for redundancy. Furthermore, all the physical hardware like the servers, the cooling systems, the chips, it all has to be shipped from Asia.
So the shipping costs just explode.
Yeah. When jet fuel prices jump, or cargo ships have to reroute thousands of miles around Africa, the cost of building and running a data center skyrockets.
Oh, an energy-intensive process, like training a massive new AI model, suddenly gets way more expensive just because a physical strait is closed. It's like the Strait of Hormuz is the main physical artery for the digital cloud. When the oil stops, the whole system feels the pressure.
That perfectly illustrates why diplomacy is shifting so rapidly.
Which brings up the other major diplomatic event happening right now. King Charles III and Queen Camilla are on day 2 of a U.S. visit. This is actually the first British monarch visit to the U.S. since 2007. And the king is addressing a joint session of Congress, which aligns with the U.S. semi-quincentennial, the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence.
What's fascinating here is the contrast. You have 19th century naval blockades on one side of the globe, and then this deep royal pageantry on the other. But the sources note this royal visit is actually a highly sophisticated cover for heavy tech policy discussions.
Oh, wow. So it's not just a ceremonial thing.
Not at all. In a post-Brexit world dealing with volatile tariffs, the UK and the US are using this diplomatic reset to lock down bilateral agreements on AI safety cooperation and digital trade frameworks.
It's literally the physical world facilitating the digital future. And that digital future is moving aggressively towards something called agentic AI. We're seeing new borders being drawn directly through artificial intelligence. Honestly, are these autonomous AI agents essentially becoming the new weapons-grade uranium of a tech Cold War?
I mean, national governments are certainly beginning to treat them that way. We are moving way past the era where AI is just, software you download to help write an email.
Yeah, the briefings show China's State Planning Commission just ordered Meta to unwind its $2 billion acquisition of a company called Manus. Manus is a Chinese-founded AI agent startup, and this deal was already partially integrated. But Beijing launched a probe, cited export controls, and they've even barred two of the startup's founders from leaving China. Meta says they complied with the law and expect a resolution, but Beijing is clearly stepping in to hoard strategic AI talent.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, China blocking the Manus acquisition is a watershed moment. This is the first time a government has explicitly categorized agentic AI alongside advanced semiconductors or dual-use military tech.
Wow.
Yeah. To understand why Beijing is so protective, we really need to clarify what agentic actually means.
Please do, because honestly, it sounds like a Silicon Valley buzzword. How is an agentic AI different from the chatbot I use on my phone?
While past technology, including most current chatbots, requires your constant input. You prompt it, it answers. You prompt it again. Agentic AI takes actions on your behalf without supervision.
Okay, so it has actual agency.
Exactly. You give it a high-level goal like, book me a flight to London and plan an itinerary based on my past preferences, and it autonomously browses the web, inputs your credit card, coordinates schedules, and executes the tasks across multiple platforms.
And the capability of these agents is just skyrocketing right now. I mean, OpenAI just released GPT-5.5. According to the release notes, it's smarter, faster, and uses significantly fewer tokens per task while matching prior latency.
Which is a huge leap in efficiency.
Right. And it excels at exactly these agentic tasks, like complex coding and autonomous web research. But the system card also noted they had to do extensive red teaming for cybersecurity and biology threats.
Which really highlights the immense potential danger here. When an AI can execute complex, multi-step workflows across the internet without a human pressing approve at every single step, the risk profile changes entirely.
Because it can do harm on its own.
Yes. If an agent can book a flight, a malicious agent can systematically probe a hospital's server for weaknesses all day and night.
That's unsettling. The money following this is staggering, though. A company called Ineffable Intelligence, founded by David Silver, the guy who created AlphaGo, just raised a record-breaking $1.1 billion seed round at a $5.1 billion valuation.
That is massive for a seed round.
And they haven't even publicly disclosed their product roadmap. Naturally, Pied Piper from the HBO show Silicon Valley is trending heavily on X. People are making viral jokes comparing these massive AI valuations and vague promises to that fictional startup. I have to ask, are we just buying into a massive hype bubble here?
Well, the valuations are highly speculative, absolutely. Investors are banking entirely on the pedigree of researchers like Silver. But while the financial bubble might pop, the underlying technological shift is very real. To actually power these autonomous agents, the physical hardware of the world fundamentally has to change.
Right, which brings us back to the physical chips. Google Cloud just unveiled its 8th generation tensor processing units, or TPUs. And they did something really interesting. They split the architecture into two specialized chips to challenge NVIDIA.
Yeah, the training and inference split.
Exactly. You have the TPU-80T, which is for memory-heavy AI model training, and the TPU-80i, which is for low-latency inference. I like to think of it like splitting your brain into a university chip and a factory chip.
I like that.
Right. The university chip intensely studies and processes a massive, complex subject over months. That's training. But the factory chip just applies that knowledge instantly in the real world as a reflex.
That is a perfect analogy. Training an AI requires massive memory bandwidth to digest the entire sum of human data. But inference, the factory chip, is about taking a single user prompt and giving you an answer with absolute minimal delay. You don't need the whole university to answer a simple question. You just need the fast reflex.
To see that reflex in action, we just have to look at Mars. NASA's Perseverance rover just used Anthropic's Claude Vision language models to autonomously plan a 400-meter route on the Martian surface late in 2025.
It's incredible.
It digested telemetry data, stitched together 10-meter path segments, and actually critiqued its own path to avoid hazards. Humans have done this exclusively for 28 years. Now Claude is cutting that planning time in half.
The crucial element there is reliability. NASA putting Claude in charge of navigating Mars proves that AI can handle complex physical environments where there is zero margin for error.
Because it's so far away.
Exactly. When a rover is millions of miles away, a human cannot intervene in real time to hit the brakes. The autonomous agent has to be flawless.
So what does this all mean for us down here? We have this incredible capability to drive on Mars, but we're handing over the keys to autonomous systems that are built on incredibly fragile earthly networks. Here's a fascinating paradox for you. The exact same AI model, Claude, that is safely driving a multi-million-dollar rover on Mars was just used by a security researcher to spot a 13-year-old software vulnerability sitting right under human developers' noses.
Ah, yes, the Apache ActiveMQ flaw.
Let's break this down because it sounds highly technical. It's a flaw CVE 2026-34197 in the Jolokia API, allowing arbitrary code execution. Over 6,400 exposed servers exist globally, and it went completely undetected for 13 years. Now, CISA is requiring federal patching by April 30th. First of all, what is an API, and why is arbitrary code execution so bad?
Okay, so an API is essentially a digital waiter. It takes a request from one software program, delivers it to another, and brings the response back.
Okay, makes sense.
Arbitrary code execution means a hacker found a way to slip a malicious note to that waiter. Instead of asking for data, the hacker tricks the server into running any command they want. It is like a bouncer at a club letting someone in because they know a magic word, and once inside, that person can reprogram the cash registers.
Wait, humans missed this massive open door for 13 years. How does an AI spot something that human security teams are actively looking for?
Because legacy code bases are massive. We are talking about millions of lines of code written by thousands of people over decades. Human eyes glaze over. An AI doesn't get tired. It can comb through the entire architecture and spot a tiny logical inconsistency that human developers missed way back in 2013.
That's wild.
AI is an incredible accelerator for defensive cybersecurity. But the terrifying part is that threat actors are using the exact same AI to move just as fast on offense.
Which brings us to the supply chain attacks. Look at what just happened to Bitwarden. A threat actor called Team PCP distributed a malicious package via the NPM registry. They used obfuscated JavaScript to steal developer credentials like AWS, Azure, and GitHub tokens. Bitwarden caught it quickly. The package was only live for a 90-minute window with 334 downloads, so end-user vaults were safe. But how does an attack like this actually work?
Think of the software ecosystem like a massive commercial bakery. If a hacker wants to shut down a specific bakery, they could try to break through the front door at night. That's a direct attack. But a supply chain attack is far more insidious. You don't attack the bakery at all. You go to the mill that supplies their flour and you poison a single bag. The baker willingly brings that flour into their kitchen, bakes with it, and serves it.
Oh, I see.
An NPM registry is just a massive library of pre-written code, the flour that developers use so they don't have to write everything from scratch. The hackers poisoned the code library.
That is terrifying. And the attacks are compounding. Microsoft just confirmed a Windows shell spoofing flaw CVE 2026-32202 is being actively exploited, allowing hackers to misrepresent where a file came from. ADT confirmed a data breach claimed by the hacking group Shiny Hunters, exposing 10 million records, including partial social security numbers. Feels like the digital walls are crumbling while the attackers are getting smarter.
It illustrates the fundamental fragility of our system. We are building our most advanced, autonomous agentic technologies on top of digital infrastructure that is remarkably vulnerable.
And these massive global forces, from geopolitical energy spikes to advanced cyber threats, they don't just stay in the cloud or in Washington. They ultimately crash right into your local school district.
Yeah, the compounding pressures on local infrastructure are just severe.
Exactly. Let's look at the utility bills. Because Iran's maneuvering in the Strait of Hormuz makes energy prices so volatile, school districts that didn't lock in their utility contracts are facing sudden budget crises heading into the 2026-27 school year.
And that operational cost spike is hitting at the exact moment federal funding is being heavily debated.
Right. The Trump administration's FY 2027 budget proposes an $8.5 billion cut to K-12 education. This specifically targets Title I funding for high-poverty schools, IDA funding for students with disabilities, and career and technical education grants.
That's a huge shift.
It is. Education advocates are warning this will disproportionately hurt rural and urban districts. Now, to be clear, Congress still have to pass this, and it's a political battle, but the numbers highlight a tightening belt for local schools.
This raises an important question, though. How do we expect an underfunded local school IT department to defend against international hacking syndicates while managing budget cuts and volatile energy costs?
Honestly, they can't, especially because their cybersecurity support is vanishing. The Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center lost $10 million in federal funding. The Department of Education's Office of Educational Technology was outright eliminated in March.
Wow.
Yeah. Year over year, the percentage of state leaders who feel they have sufficient cyber funding has plummeted from 19% down to just 8%.
That reality is reflected globally, too. The 2026 COSN report surveyed leaders across 14 countries. Their top hurdles are universal: staff
Yeah.
retention, managing AI adoption, and securing cybersecurity funding.
And the AI adoption piece is a total nightmare. Remember China blocking the Manus acquisition?
No.
Because of evolving export controls, school IT teams now have to heavily scrutinize every single AI classroom tool to see if it has Chinese roots. It's creating vendor paralysis.
It's just too much for a small team to handle.
And honestly, it is making some districts rethink their entire philosophy on technology. LA Unified just voted to limit classroom screen time and return to shared Chromebook carts, completely abandoning the one-to-one device model.
That is a massive paradigm shift. For 2 decades, the prevailing logic was that putting a screen in the hands of every single student equaled progress.
But are we finally realizing that handing a screen to a 7-year-old isn't a silver bullet? Like, more tech doesn't automatically mean better learning.
Schools are realizing that technology is a tool, not a strategy. When those tools introduce geopolitical risk, massive cyber vulnerabilities, and severe screen fatigue for students, stepping back to shared, localized resources is a deeply rational response.
I want to pivot here because the news we've covered is heavy. Let's look at how humans cope with this chaos by checking the pop culture pulse. We have some deeply human stories dominating the conversation right now. 60 Minutes is trending heavily after Norah O'Donnell interviewed President Trump.
Right, that was a big moment.
Yeah. O'Donnell read aloud writings from the shooter who approached the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which sparked a very visible, viral, on-camera eruption from Trump. It has ignited massive debates over journalistic standards. But in that exact same episode, there was a deeply candid, quiet interview with 54-year-old former Senator Ben Sasse about his pancreatic cancer diagnosis.
The contrast in a single broadcast is striking.
It is the ultimate whiplash. You have this explosive, polarizing moment regarding political violence, followed immediately by this very vulnerable universal reality of human mortality. People are processing a lot of anxiety right now, which might explain the escapism we are seeing in entertainment.
Like the Euphoria numbers.
Exactly. Euphoria Season 3 is breaking HBO Max records. It picked up 8.5 million viewers in its first 3 days, up 44% from Season 2. The show did a 5-year time jump, and the character Maddie is trending heavily all over social media. People are desperate for a distraction.
When the global systems feel precarious, cultural touchstones become a necessary release valve.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Amidst all the heavy news, the blockades, and the cyber threats, we actually have a genuinely miraculous medical breakthrough. The FDA just approved Regeneron's otormenai. It is the first ever gene therapy for genetic hearing loss.
Specifically targeting mutations in the OTF gene.
Yes, and I want to explain how profound this is. The OTF gene produces a protein called otoferlin, which is essentially the chemical messenger that allows the inner ear to communicate with the brain. If you have a mutation there, the ear works mechanically, but the signal never reaches the brain, resulting in profound deafness.
Right, the hardware works, but the wiring is faulty.
Exactly. This new therapy uses a harmless virus to deliver a working copy of the gene directly into the ear. The clinical trial results are astounding. 80% of participants achieved the primary endpoint, and 42% achieved normal hearing. We're talking about babies born completely deaf who can now hear whispers.
The precision required to rewrite a tiny mutation in the human genome and fully restore a sensory function is just staggering.
And the kicker: Regeneron is providing this therapy free of charge to U.S. patients. That completely shatters the usual cynical narrative we have about pharmaceutical companies and drug accessibility.
Yeah.
It is pure hope.
It really is. And if we look back at the entirety of our discussion today, We've spent this time dissecting maritime blockades, budget deficits, massive cyber supply chain attacks, and the geopolitical hoarding of autonomous AI. The map of the world feels incredibly chaotic, but the precision of this gene therapy reminds us that amidst all the noise, science is still actively in the business of performing quiet miracles.
It really is incredible. Well, thank you for joining us on this journey today. We've gone from the physical choke points of the Strait of Hormuz all the way to the surface of Mars and right down to the microscopic DNA in our ears.
Before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We saw today that AI can navigate a rover on Mars and comb through millions of lines of legacy code to find human errors from 13 years ago. If AI models become as autonomous and capable as the agentic tech governments are currently hoarding, how long until an AI, not a human, team engineers the next miraculous gene therapy entirely on its own? And when it does, who owns the miracle?
Wow. That is a question we are definitely going to have to answer soon. Remember, though the map of our modern world might be invisible and constantly shifting, stay curious, stay informed, and know that there's always something worth smiling about. See you next time.